We're with Kristof, one of DevHead's resident embedded programming experts. Hey, Kristof, what are some of the reasons that new developers struggle with concepts like variables when they're beginning programming?
So, as a new developer, embedded software developer, you have to realize where do variables live, how long are they stored, and what is their reach. And this requires a deeper understanding of the memory structures in microcontrollers, as well as the fundamentals of the C programming language, and to combine them together. So let's get back to this question, how long and where do variables live, which we covered already in our previous video. And here is an overview of all the kinds of variables and where they live in memory and how long they live there. So we got here all the variables that have a fixed address in the data or BSS section in memory and live for the entire duration of the program. So as you can see, these three kinds of variables all have the same characteristics here. The global variable has a scope of the entire code base. It means that a global variable, which you define outside any function, usually at the top of a file, can be reached from wherever in your code base. While the file-only global variable can be reached only within the same file, within the same compilation unit. And these are very similar to global variables. They just have a tiny difference. You put a static keyword in front of them. Then last but not least, we have the local static variable. This is also a statically declared variable, but defined inside a function. And this kind of variable has, although it's also stored in a fixed address and lives for the entire duration of the program, its scope, its reach is only limited to the function. So you cannot reach this kind of variable outside the function. Now, another two kinds of variables are the automatic variable and the automatic parameter. And they both have an address in the stack. So remember, when you call a function, for this function call, there will be a stack frame. So it's like several variables and parameters that belong to this function are pushed onto the stack. And these variables and parameters from the function, they live only as long as the function is active, as long as the function is running, because the moment the function quits, the function ends, this stack frame is popped off the stack and destroyed. And naturally, their scope, their reach is limited to the function as well. Now, we call them automatic variables and automatic parameters, but this auto keyword is usually not required. So by default, if you don't put it there, if the variable is defined within the function, it's automatic by default. Same for the parameters. And then we have here a strange one, the register variable. I almost never use it. It's a variable that is stored in a CPU register instead of the RAM memory. So now that we've had an overview of all these kinds of variables, I'd like to show you a few examples in the Embeetle IDE. And let's open Embeetle. Now, here in Embeetle IDE, I have set up an example project already. It's for the tiny Scarab board. This one.
I've got a tiny Scarab too.
Yeah, I gave them to you in Nuremberg in Germany, right?
Yep, actually, there's like 20 of them behind me over here.
Right. So, yeah, so this board is quite popular actually in the DevHeads community. And that's why I'd like to show you these examples in the Tiny Scarab project. Let's get on with it. Okay, so let's have a look here at the main.c file, and let's create a few variables. I'll start with creating a global variable, and I'll call it foo. So int foo. That's all there is to it, and I save it. Now, remember, a global variable, you just have to define it outside of any function, usually at the top of the file. And Embeetle will tell you, if you look here in the symbols window, it will tell you what you're clicked on. So I click now on this variable foo, and Embeetle tells me it's a global variable with the name foo. So let's now make it a static variable, static global variable, and save. Now Embeetle tells me it's the static variable foo, and the static variable defined outside of any function is a file only global. It's like a global variable, but only reachable from within this file, this compilation unit. Now let's make a local variable, int bar, and save. So Embeetle tells me this variable bar is an automatic variable because I defined it inside a function, right? Now let's put the auto keyword there, which I already said like it's not really needed, but can do it anyway. And well, nothing really changes. It's still an automatic variable defined in the function local variable. So let's then add a parameter, save, and then I click on it and it tells me this is, well, parameter A. Well, yeah, I think I covered them all. That's really how you can inspect variables in Embeetle. Oh, and maybe I should also show quickly the memory. So here you can see in the dashboard for the microcontroller how much flash and RAM memory this microcontroller has. When I build the project, oops, I made a little mistake here. I'll just remove this code. I'll build again. Yep. Okay, good. So now you can see here how many bytes of the RAM memory we've used. It's only 444 bytes. If you click here, you can see the individual RAM sections. So we have the .bss section, the .data section, we've covered that in the previous video, and the .stack section, which is the function stack.
Okay, well, Kristof, it looks like it's pretty easy to get started with variables and using embedded memory. But I also want to point out the fact that in Embeetle, we saw a couple of things that make it really easy and efficient to get going and get started programming. Even if you're an experienced or inexperienced developer, you can hover over what you're working on at the moment in code, and it'll show you what the type of variable is. But then also what you just showed as far as how much memory is being taken up on the target is something that can save you tons of time and just make it way more efficient when you're programming a microcontroller.
Absolutely. That's one of the things we envisioned when we started with Embeetle. Embeetle is not just a general purpose IDE. It's an IDE specifically tailor-made for microcontrollers. And that's why we implemented features like this, where you can see the memory consumption on a very detailed level. You can, you can see these bars of memory for the flash and the RAM, but you can dig deeper and see all the sections within the RAM and the flash memory, and how many bytes are being used up there. And this is the kind of information that an embedded developer needs. While, if you're developing desktop applications or other apps, then you're not interested in this. So that's what makes Embeetle stand out for embedded development.
That's awesome. Well, I know one of the next places that developers will encounter on their embedded programming journey is declarations, definitions, the difference
Oh
between
yeah.
the two. And that's always a
Mm-hmm.
place where I know that myself and others tend to find themselves inserting bugs inadvertently. So,
Absolutely.
what can you tell us about what we'll see next time?
So yeah, as you say, the difference between declarations and definitions for variables is something that even experienced developers sometimes get confused about. And it's extremely important to really grasp this difference. And that's what we're going to do it next time.
Great. So if developers want to go and find out more about variables, embedded memory, embedded programming, or the Embeetle IDE, where should they go?
Well, there are two places to go. One is the DevHeads community on Discord, because there are tons of developers like me that are very active in that community and who can help you out. And secondly, you should also go to embeetle.com, where you can download the IDE, and you can also find a lot of information and, for example, this C programming course.
That's great. He's at Mulier. I'm at TechieLou, and you can find both of us and all of DevHead's engineering experts in the Discord server, which is linked to on screen and in the description below. We'll see you in the server.